Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another RJS and Madoris webinar. The federal budget, all of our accountants were up all night, very excited about this. Looking forward to discussing what essentially is an election budget. As everyone would be well aware, this is just a budget. It's not in law yet, so there's plenty of work to be done, but there's certainly things to talk about today that will affect you, your family, and your business. So let's move on and start introducing our specialists who are joining us today. Thank you. For those of you who haven't worked across the group before, welcome. We're 16 locations, 200 plus staff, and over 55,000 happy clients. And we've been doing this for over 38 years young this year, which is fantastic. And we want to continue to offer that personalised service to everybody across Australia. How do we get this done? On to the next slide, please, Charles. Very simply, we surround you by a plethora of professionals. We've been doing it for over 3 decades. We've won many awards around our service and our approach. And as I said, our people are at the centre of everything we do, and we surround you on one guiding vision for you as individuals to achieve your goals. Okay, a quick disclaimer. Next slide, please, Charles. General warning advice. The specialists join us today in Alf, Tony and Roy are experts in making the complex simple. So lots of things that they'll talk about today will resonate with you and should be very specific to you. Please take note, this is not specific advice. They're experts at making the complex simple. So while you're aligned with it, please pick up the phone, send an email, make time to speak to these experts and these specialists and make it very personal about you. Today's just a general discussion. So thank you, team. Okay, joining me, as I said, Tony, Alf and Roy. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to see you all again. Roy, how'd you go last night? I know I got my first email from you at 3:30 this morning, so you're clearly very excited about the budget.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for the invite, Paul. Love being involved in these sorts of things. I actually had an early night and then woke up early and did some research. So I waited till all the hype was gone.
Yep, fantastic. We have got lots of questions today, both for tax and also thank you for those who sent them in earlier. Tony, I know you've had a chance to have a look, mate. Any quick thoughts from you before we start?
Oh, as you said early on, Paul, it's an election budget. So there's people that'll be happy, there's people that aren't happy, and there'll be, I think it's straight down the middle. I think it's one of those things where it'll impact a lot of people, which is a benefit to all. So
yeah, I think the key is to start to think about it. Well done. Yeah. Alf, how are you this morning, mate?
I'm well, Paul. Thank you.
I know you're fresh back from holidays. Welcome back to Australia, straight into budget time.
Just flew straight into the storm.
Literally, if you're in Queensland. Mate, thoughts on what we've seen today?
Look, I agree with what Tony said. You know, this is very much lined up for the election we're due to have in a month and a half. So in terms of what we deal with it's not overly complicated, but I think it like Tony said, it's going to touch a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. It's going to touch a lot of people. It's going to offer those opportunities. It's going to offer others the chance to rethink or re-strategize. So the most important thing to everybody at home, there's lots of information today. Lots of it will pertain to you. Please put your hand up and speak to one of our experts. We're very happy to help. I think that's the most important message for today. Okay, let's make it easy and break it up into a few key areas. Roy, Tony, Alf, let's start with tax. If we could start, what we've done, ladies and gents at home, we tried to break this up into a very easy matrix to understand. Across the top, we've got those client base, so those people that these areas could be affecting. Wealth accumulators are generally those in their 20s to 40s looking to build wealth, have some debt, and 2 children. You know, the standard Aussie family looking to grow. Pre-retirees, obviously, you know, 50 and above. Retirees are anywhere above that, 60, 65. SMSF are those with self-managed super funds, business owners. High net worth, those who are currently self-funded retirees or looking to end that way, and have the ability to be debt-free and fund themselves. And then, of course, employers. Each slide we go through and change that matrix slightly, so I'll reiterate that as we go. But I might kick off with you, Roy. What are we looking at for taxation from this budget?
Yeah, well, the cost of living tax offset, top of the list there, 420. That's a little bit of a sweetener because I think because of the election. So they're giving the low and middle income earners a little bit more than what they were getting. So they're now going to get $1,500 per individual or $3,000 per couple, which means that if you're looking for money a bit short on to pay the rego or the rent, then you want to get your tax return done pretty quickly, because this should flow back to you when you do your tax return.
Yeah, I think that's 20 million Aussies are eligible for that, so that's a big chunk. Those at home, Roy's just silent there because there is construction going on. Roy, thanks for that. trying to manage that.
One of the advantages when we're doing a live webinar.
Yeah, exactly. Did you want to continue on in between drills there?
I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background. There is construction going on. I think it's probably the one thing that does surprise me is they put an end date to this low middle income rebate. So that is surprising, because I actually thought they would bring it in long term, because I think it's a really good thing. When people do their tax return, they get $1,500, which was $1,040, is a lump sum extra money, goes into the economy if people spend it. And it's good for the economy, it's good for spending. So I thought they'd keep that as a mainstay. I'm surprised that they've set a sunset clause on it. Yeah,
well, don't forget, we get to see the opposition's reply, so that may change. You're right, it would be a good idea to keep that in the market for longer. What about increased employee share schemes, tax deductions, Medicare levy, low income trends? Anything else you want to cover off on that?
I don't want to take all the spotlight away from Alf.
Well, don't worry. I've actually got lots of questions already, ladies and gentlemen, on tax. So we're coming back to tax questions, and there's a few that aren't covered here.
I will say, though, that the fact that the COVID tests are tax deductible, I know that's a budget announcement, but by gosh, that's just common sense, isn't it? That should always have been tax deductible. If the employer or the employee are paying for COVID tests because they've got to go to work, then make it tax deductible. So that's sort of no surprise. It made it sound like a big thing, but to me, it's just common sense.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Alf, anything that jumps out of you, particularly for individuals or business owners at tax level at the moment?
Yeah, agree with you, Roy. That is a common sense, thing. I mean, we want to keep our staff safe. We want to keep our clients safe, and to have not brought that in would have been a bit of a travesty. So good to see that. Look, I like the way they sold it yesterday. An extra $420, and it almost made it sound like you were going to get a check. And I think that's what most people tend to think, but it won't come out until you do your tax return. This is the one thing people need to keep in mind. So in terms of this announcement, for those who are not on welfare payments, this is how you'll get that money. Look, things like the employee share scheme, yes, that's been extended. It's been touched up a little bit to make it easier, but in reality, I don't know how many people that will actually affect. And certainly, unless you're working for a large employer, it's not really going to affect, I suppose, the majority of the small family businesses that we would be looking after.
Yeah, good. Thanks. And Ewa just sent in a clarification point for those of you at home. The X's on this grid are aligning to the taxation opportunity and who it will actually impact or benefit. So they indicate what it will be. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Roy. Answer that as well. Tony, anything from a wealth perspective that we need to be aware of in tax?
Look, there is. So in relation to the $420 odd, I think wealth, and I'll say from the economic point of view. So the extra $420, yes, kicks off from when you do your tax return. So that's July onwards. These measures that have come out in relation to the budget have all been based on, they've said, the cost of living, because cost of living has gone up. So we've seen fuel go up, we've seen rent go up, we've seen food prices go up. There's been a supply and demand issue there as well. So one thing to take into account is that $420 doesn't come in until July. So less so from a taxation point of view, but an economic point of view, something to be considered is any inflationary pressures this has, considering that inflation is already running quite high at the moment, which will have an impact to interest rates further down the track, but we'll cover off on that further down the track.
Yeah, correct. As well as being an election budget, it's taking into account world and local economic factors as well. So there's more to discuss on that, both in the county and wealth side. Thanks, gents. I might hand over some questions now, specifically from clients who sent them in earlier or attendees. And James Harvey asked the first one that probably covers a few others who asked similar questions. What are the specific changes for those over 60s?
From a tax point of view, I'll let Roy and Alf speak about that. In fact, we'll answer that question, James, in relation to super, because we've got superannuation a little bit later on, and there are some impact in relation to tax and in relation to super and impact to 60-year-olds plus. There's also impact in relation to, I know one of the other questions there was in terms of the drawdown rate in relation to pensions, and we'll cover off on that shortly as well.
Okay. At the same time, we'll cover franking credits there, which Jeffrey had a question on.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we'll come back to those ones. One here, any relative changes to Australians, citizens based overseas? I didn't see anything come through for that.
You're asking, Paul, if there's anything that affects people based overseas?
Correct.
I didn't see anything in the budget related to
I didn't see anything either. Simon, so Simon sent that question through.
So with anything in relation to, so there was nothing in the budget that came out last night. However, just a reminder that if there's anything in previous years, those things are still, they have been passed, and so those measures will continue. And those measures came in earlier this year.
Yeah, great. So there's a couple of tax questions specifically for businesses as well. And you talked about something that's in place already. So these two, we've got one from Shane, one from Hayden, very similar. Grants available. How are business owners best suited to find out about the grants available and gain access to them? What's their best protocol for that? Roy, I know you did a lot of work on this in the last financial year.
Yeah, so this is a little different to the grants that were announced during COVID over the last 2 years. These benefits for business are all about employment, trying to keep us get as close to full employment as possible, which is not zero by the way, but as close as possible to full employment. So it's about employing apprentices and putting them through, or employing people and putting them through training schemes. So if you employ an apprentice, the process that our clients go through is that you go to the apprentice group that organises it, and they organise the grants for you.
Yeah, okay. Hayden actually asked one, any opportunities for those who missed grants last year?
I would say to Hayden, not really. I know Hayden missed out on grants last year, but unless he's going to employ people or train people, then there's no other grants. This is very different to a COVID budget where there was lots of announcements, lots of different grants, state and federal. This has really moved past that. So Hayden, bad news, there's not really grants related to people who are doing poorly at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Amy wants to understand about who can gain access to these apprentice support schemes.
Yeah, anybody who's an employer, Amy. So if you want to employ somebody, you've got to employ somebody as an apprentice. It's got to go through the Apprentice Commission. So you just maybe Google search that, and there's groups that allow you to employ, and they do all the paperwork. So they hold your hand throughout that process.
Yeah, great. Here's one a bit chunkier as well. Professor Max Reynolds would like to know, are there any incentives that we can claim for employment of new staff, also opening up in the overseas market, particularly Bangladesh, China, Vietnam?
Oh, good question from the professor. I don't think I saw.
I didn't see anything as specific, but
I don't think I saw anything that related to promoting overseas markets. Alf, did you see anything for that?
No, not at all. Look, the thing that I just caught my attention was, that they're looking to try and, I suppose, fill this the workforce to try and sort of bolster that by, loosening up on the visas that are going to be granted for, working holiday makers, student visas, and relaxing some of the work conditions on those. And I think that's just a direct reflection on, some of the shortages that we've seen. I mean, you go to a restaurant, you go to any sort of hospitality venue, and they're struggling for staff. So that's the only thing I saw in terms of trying to sort of get this employment or employee shortage addressed.
Yeah, and I might just drill down a little bit more detail on that employment and apprentices. Interestingly, in the release papers, it says that if you take on an apprentice or trainee, so defined trainee, up until 30th of June 2022, now that's 3 months away. Clearly there's an election in the meantime, so that's important. You can get 50% of the wage paid for the first year, 10% in the second year, and 5% in the third year. So they've staggered these apprentice and a trainee benefits over a 3-year period. So they really do want employment, as Alf has just outlined.
Yeah, great for business owners. I might just go back to Professor Max there for a little bit. It doesn't mean, this is just a budget they're talking about now. It doesn't mean there's not grants or access to assist people looking to expand their markets as well. I met with a business owner this morning that's done something similar over the last 12 months. He was sharing his case study. So they are around. Maybe I can find out more for you directly there. Max, if you'd like to drop me an email. There's certainly opportunity around, just not mentioning this budget. Okay, thank you. Jess, I'll just check, we've got a Q&A. No, we've covered those. Okay, thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Social Security. This is covering wealth accumulators, pre-retirees, retirees, self-managed super fund, business, high net worth, and employers again. As I said, they will change each slide. The X's indicate who are affected by this. So predominantly retirees, pre-retirees and accumulators. So in other words, those who are working currently have debt, looking to make increased wealth and looking to get themselves into a position to be debt-free and self-supported. Alf, I'll pass to you on the first one.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So I suppose the main one here is the flip side to the 420 that's going to be built into the tax returns for those who are working. So the flip side to this is that the $250 one-off payment to anybody who's on welfare or is a welfare recipient. So this will cover mainly the age pensioners, but anybody on disability, parenting payments, carer payments, and so on. So there's a fairly long list as to who would qualify for that. Now, again, because we're generally not doing a tax return, this will be a payment that will come through the normal payment system. So that's the big ticket item here, and obviously a little bit of work too on the parental leave scheme that's been tweaked up again. One of those ones that you're probably better off having a look into it as to what are the changes, but it is being expanded. So again, just again trying to help families out and trying to keep people either employed or close to their employers during those periods.
I'll jump in there as well, Paul. Just so in relation to the 20 weeks, that's been for parental leave scheme. So that's been increased from 18 weeks to 20 weeks. And the one thing that they made clear last night was the fact that what they want to do is they want to be able to break up that 20 weeks. So it wasn't a period previously where it was 18 weeks straight. What they're able to do is now say, well, okay, look, if you want 10 weeks now and 10 weeks further down the track, you're able to do that. So that's something just for employers to be aware of as well. In relation
Good point.
Yeah, and in relation to the $250 cost of living payment, so as Alf mentioned there, it covers the age pension, youth allowance, farm household allowances, pension and concession card holders, and so on. From my understanding, this was actually not going to be in the budget until the last week, where they realised that they need to do something for the people that are on those concession type payments, quite simply because they were going to get missed out in this budget. So this was a late inclusion for the $250. This is based on the cost of living, and as I said earlier, how things have increased. The cost of living has increased over that period of time. These payments will be made from the 28th of April. 22, which is, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 2 weeks before the election. 3 weeks before the election.
That's curious outcome, isn't it?
Oh,
Good timing, coincidentally.
Who would have thought it, hey? I think Roger's had a question about the benefits for pensioners this year. Is there anything specific other than we spoke about here? A bit of extra cash, a bit of extra flexibility. One of the questions earlier, when we're talking about tax, did have an impact that we'll talk into when we get to super and particularly franking credits. Other than that, is there anything that's jumping out to assist pensioners, gents?
If we're talking about pensioners, and I'll go to Centrelink pension versus account-based pension to begin with. So Centrelink pension, it is just the $250. But as you would have seen in the previous slides, they are spending money over the next number of years, not in the next 12 months, but over the next number of years on aged care facilities and things like that. So that will all have an impact in relation to people on Centrelink pensions and account-based pensions as well as the population ages. In relation to superannuation and account-based pensions, there is the continuation of the halving, but we've got that on the next slide, so I'll cover off on that as we go. But Alf or Roy, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I picked up in the detail that they're going to grow the care and support workforce for aged care. So they're offering 15,000 low or free training places for aged care courses under the Job Trainer Fund. And that's pretty significant. Again, trying to help the aged care area, but also to keep heading towards full employment.
Yeah, okay. So again, the theme continues.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Thank you, Stella. Superannuation. Big impact here across the board for lots of people. We're all interested in super. I might start with you on this one, Tony, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so with superannuation, what we have seen is that there has been that extension of the minimum drawdown in relation to account-based pensions. So previously, if you're under the age of 65 and you're drawing an account-based pension, your drawdown rate prior to the last 2 years was 4%, and over the last 2 years, because of COVID, they had the COVID relief where it was reduced down by 50% to 2%. That they will continue for another financial year. So that will mean that if you don't need to take out as much money from superannuation. So certainly something that we've seen from a financial planning side of things is where clients that don't need the extra money, we can actually dial that down from the 4% or the 5% or 6%, depending on how much the minimum was for your age. We've been able to dial that back, and that means that you're able to keep more in your super that grows for longer.
Yeah. A big one too, well, super guarantee increase.
Yeah, and so increasing to 10.5%, that is in line with previous budgets as well. So that is, it wasn't so much mentioned as part of last night, but that is
coming on.
Correct, absolutely. So you will see that increase moving forward. And as I said earlier, in relation to anything that was proposed from a taxation point of view, as in personal tax, that was proposed in previous years, that has been passed, that will continue. So what we will see is, and I'm going back to tax now, but from 2024, gents, correct me if I'm wrong, that the tax rate for incomes for people between $45,000 and $200,000 will be 30%.
Yes, that's correct. I didn't pick up the date when super goes to 10.5%. Did anybody else pick that up, Alf or Tony? Is that from the 1st of July this year or the next year?
1st of July
22,
yeah.
Oh, so it's this year.
Sorry, right.
Yeah.
So in terms of these, the SGC, so there was a bit of a, I suppose they put the brakes on the increase or the annual increase due to COVID. That's now off. So we're going to be looking at, if you're an employer, it's an extra 0.5% every year moving forward until we hit the 12% mark. And obviously as an employee, that's that's effectively an extra 0.5% in super guarantee that you'll be receiving up until we hit 12%.
Absolutely. And it's important to, I'll take the chance to remind everyone, superannuation is an investment strategy, should be personalised and should be thought about and looked at as a priority, and speak to our professionals. It's not something to look at when you're 60. Should be looking at it now, particularly since more of your money's going into it. Okay, thanks, team. We have got a couple of super questions here. Ada, Virginia, Tracy, Tally, and Phil. Mostly they're split 50 between self-managed super fund. Is there anything that's not covered here, gents, that a self-managed super fund trustee should be aware of, or someone with a self-managed super fund needs to be aware of?
I'll jump in relation to just the account-based pensions to begin with. So once again, just something that I covered earlier, account-based pensions, minimum, if you're 65 to 74 years of age, that's gone from 5% back down to, the proposed is 2.5%. Once again, this is yet to be passed though, and I know we've mentioned a few times before. In saying that, from what I saw last night, in relation to the $250 cash for pensioners and concession holders, the $420 odd and the SGC relief, that will be passed without any issues from my understanding.
Okay.
Yep, and to answer one of the questions, Paul, was when is this effective from? These reduced rates are through until the 30th of June 2023.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Roy. So, there's a couple other questions specifically about self-managed super funds. What's happening with drawdowns in the next 12 months?
Covered that. Yep. So we've just covered that. Yep.
Fantastic. And bail-ins. How do we protect our wealth from bail-ins?
Bail-ins?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
Explain.
Right. Yeah, I was hoping you guys knew because I didn't understand that either. So
I have a strange feeling it's a US term.
Is it? Tracy, please just drop us an email or give us a call. We're happy to talk about that if we can understand that a bit further, or jump on now and give us a bit more detail and we can address it for everyone. Thanks, guys. Okay, next slide, please, Stella. Women's measures, some great work done here. Funding to promote women in leadership, women's safety and economic security packages this is going to affect a lot of Australia. I think it's an outstanding approach. Tony, do you want to lead on this one?
Yeah, so what they have done is they have increased the amount of funding for different programs that they've put in place. And so as part of the amounts that they've got, I think it was from memory, $1.5 billion that they're going to be spending on women's safety, whether it be family, domestic or sexual violence. So they're just adding extra funding to these programs because they know that the impact, you go back 3 years ago, they didn't have much funding at all. They've seen that there has been a positive impact, but the money hasn't been enough. So they're certainly adding more funding to that to certainly make a difference.
Well done. Yeah. Okay. Roy or Alf, is there anything that we should be aware of here? I know on here it doesn't say it affects employers. I think it does because it gives them opportunities. Anything you guys would add from a tax or compliance perspective?
Not a lot to what's already been added by Tony from me, but there was a stat at which I couldn't find at short notice. I remember reading last night that there was 54% of women were getting one of the benefits, which were they put that under the women are benefiting under these banners. I can't remember which benefit it was, but I'll find it in due course.
Okay. Thank you, team. Stella, next slide, please. Other measures. So there's quite a few questions covering off in here. Alf, I might get you to take the lead on this one and we can go through the questions. There's a few here. We've got home ownership, tax questions, rates. It continues on, but I might get you to just talk to this slide first, if you don't mind. It covers a lot of people across the board here.
Yeah, well, unless you happen to be owning an electric car, which I know that sector is growing, but this one, the top one, affects pretty much every one of us, and that's halving the excise on fuel. So, Now, effectively, we should be seeing across the board at least a 22-cent drop in the price at the pump. When I was watching the telecast last night, they said, okay, well, we're expecting that the retailers will be passing this on, and they threw it back to the ACCC to monitor this. Now, anyone who's got a long enough memory, we've seen multiple inquiries into fuel prices run by the ACCC, and the collusion by the fuel retailers and those sorts of things. So I'm hoping that this is something that will happen without it needing to be monitored, because I don't know how good a monitoring job the ACCC will do on this. It is temporary. Again, we've got an election 6 weeks away. This is very targeted and done deliberately, but I think it is needed. I mean, the fuel prices at the moment are crazy, so I think this is a positive thing. In terms of the home guarantee scheme, so again, this is a continuation of the existing scheme to try and get people into their first homes, and this is broken up into 3 different items. You've got your first home guarantee, the single parent family home guarantee, and then there's a new scheme that's coming on, which is a regional scheme. Now, I think the regional scheme, where the other ones tend to knock out people who have owned a home previously, the regional scheme allows somebody who has previously owned a home but may not have owned a home for the last 5 years. So that's something different, which we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And just with that, there's only 10,000 guarantees per year for the regional scheme. So it's not a huge number, but it's certainly encouraging people to move regionally.
Yeah, I might just also add, Paul, if I can, this is not a grant. This is not like a first home buyer's grant. This is actually a guarantee where the loan is guaranteed by the government, so you don't have to pay mortgage protection insurance if you've only got a 5% deposit. So it's allowing people to get into the home property market much quicker, but you're going to have a 95% debt to asset value ratio. So that's that. You don't look at this grant or this benefit and go, let's jump in. I think you've got to do a fair bit of work with your accountant, your wealth manager, to say, what happens if interest rates go up 2%? What happens if I have to cut down to 4 days a week? What will happen? And I think this needs some careful planning. I get nervous when somebody comes to me and gives me a high five and said, I've just bought a house and I borrowed 95% of the purchase price. And I think, oh, okay, that's a bit scary. So think twice before you jump into the home guarantee scheme.
Couldn't agree more. Do your research and do your planning, and have some modelled numbers with the 2% buffer at least, and model multiple scenarios. And the guys online today and their teams will help everyone do that. So and that should be done in every part of your life and your business anyway. Get your models, make an educated choice.
And I just found that stat I was looking for. 52% of last year's people who got this grant, because this is a continuation, 52% were women.
Yeah, great. Great. Okay. You always sent a couple of quite good messages. Hang on. I think you just done another one, a very long one for me to read. What we might do is get you specifically some more stuff about the women's economic schemes, and we'll find more information about that. Jen, did you want to dig deeper in that, or did you have any more specifics we could share today? It was a good question you was asked. What do we know more about it? Any more details on that we could share?
No, I think
the home scheme.
Yeah.
No, look, in terms of the first home, that they're expanding that system. I think there were 10,000 places. That's going out to about 35.
35. Yeah.
But again, to echo those issues. I mean, we've had very stable interest rates over good 10 odd years. I think people need to start thinking and be prepared that inflation starts taking off a little bit. We know that one of the levers that the government has to pull is to increase the interest rate. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, especially if you are as Roy said, if you are going to venture down the road and have a 95% borrowing on that purchase, just to really do your sums and just factor in perhaps a 1 to even 3% interest rate rise and say, okay, well, can I make this work if the interest rates were to move over the next say 5 years? Am I going to be able to afford this? I mean, I know that there's a prediction that wages will grow and they'll start keeping up and hopefully surpassing inflation, but really it is important to do your sums here.
Yeah, great, thank you. Just on the chat line, thanks to Pierre who sent through a really good snapshot for Eva regards to women's economic social security packages. A continued increased focus on boosting women to the workforce, including programs to encourage women into careers, science, technology, engineering and maths, additional grant funding under the Women's Leadership and Development Program, fund capacity building and financial support for early stage enterprises that improve safety and economic security for Indigenous women, assist women following a career break and absence from the workplace, and on top of that, childcare. So there's certainly a lot more to go into that. So thank you very much, Pierre. Okay, gents, we've got a couple other general questions here. Does anybody want to go into the skills and training technology boost for small business as well? I think there's quite a bit in that. That's a very detailed part of it. Roy, did you want to dig a bit deeper?
Yeah, just on the technology boost, what they've said is that if you spend money on technology up to 100,000, not only do you get the tax deduction, but you get a bonus deduction of 20% on top of what you spend. Now, interestingly, last night, and this says up until the 30th of June 2023, so there's a sunset clause on this, but it's on digital items such as, and I'm quoting here, cloud computing, cybersecurity, accounting, and e-invoicing software and web page design. Now that's really good, but Josh Frydenberg was up early this morning and he was doing his interviews, and on television this morning he said hardware and software, and my ears pricked up and went, hang on, I don't remember reading hardware last night. I think he misspoke, but this is probably an example to our listeners that sometimes we're working off a media release and a budget paper that's 1,000 pages long. We don't have all the details. So it'll be interesting to see whether the technology investment boost does include hardware. We had a question from somebody who's in the IT world, and he said, how does it affect them? Well, I will say you have an absolute marketing opportunity, because any business that you're going to do a website for or sell some software for or cybersecurity, they're not going to just get the tax deduction for what they spend with you, but they're going to get an additional 20% tax deduction. That sounds like a great marketing opportunity for your industry.
Absolutely.
That's a good, sorry, Paul, that's a good point, Roy. I think that the thing that hinted at it, and in the examples, everything talks about software and cloud, but they do mention portable payment devices. And I thought, okay, well, that's a device, it's a bit of hardware. Does this now extend to laptops, these sort of items? So, I'm hoping that it does cover those, because I mean, that's really where, businesses are spending money. And the other thing too, that I don't know if anybody else has come across this, but trying to get computer equipment at the moment, there's a waiting list on certain items. You just cannot get some hardware. And so we know that, people who are intending to spend are having to, put those things on order, and they may not fall in before the 30th of June this year. So, for those items, I do hope that they are included.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Tony, did you have anything for small business training technology?
No, I think we've covered it. I think Roy and Alpha have covered it. And yep.
Fantastic. Okay, gents, we've got a plethora of questions here across a bit of a wide stream. Andrew's asked what it'll be like at the end of the year. I'm not sure anyone will speculate by that much, but what are your thoughts? What's your general position on interest rates, Roy?
My gut feel is that we're going to have 2 interest rate increases. I think one will come fairly soon. And I think the budget paper, on my reading on memory, they have factored to have at least 1, maybe 2 increases this year. So I would expect, and if I remember my reading, it actually said the government's okay with that increase because these people have capacity with their savings and their income growth to pay higher interest if interest rates do go up.
Okay. Tony, Alf?
Look, I'll say that I agree with Roy. Certainly the first rate increase will come, I'll say post-election, anywhere from June, July through to September. I do think they will wait. The RBA will want to wait as long as they can. However, I think with the measures that'll get passed as a result of this budget, will push up inflationary pressures, which will increase the need to increase rates. There was something that I read yesterday that said rates could be sitting up around that 2% mark by the end of next year. Now, the realist in me says I think that's probably a fraction too much, because that's a number of rate increases over throughout this year and next year, and you won't see the impact of that. So if I increase rates today, you won't see the impact of that in a month's time, because maybe you've just paid your mortgage payment before it or just after it. So it's going to take a few months for that to see through. So I actually think that we won't necessarily be as high as that, but that will depend on what happens with inflation. But certainly I don't think 2% higher from where we are today is realistic. I think maybe about that 1.5% mark would be closer to the point.
Yeah, like I said, all economic indicators are suggesting it's coming. So I think the best way to answer that question, and as Andrew in his question, he said, it really is speculation. We know it's going to go up. Is start to plan for it, start to prepare, and get some real data.
Have your cash flow ready, so
yeah.
you should factor that in now already. We've had it. There's a whole generation of people that have not seen rates above 4%.
Yeah.
Right. So start factoring that in now. The fact that if it happens, well, guess what? You're ready for it. If it doesn't happen, you've got extra cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Start making educated choices. There's a chance to start to get ahead. Yeah. Okay. There's a couple of political ones. How transparent do you think the measures will be? I think that's open for interpretation. Here's a good one from James. If one has too much cash, it's not a bad problem to have, James. Where are the safe places to diversify into? Tony, I'll hand this one straight to you.
Safe places. Well, safe places wouldn't be under the mattress. I don't know how safe that is. Or in your home. Look, I would say, number one, seek advice from the advisors that we've got here. Certainly KB, Trevor, whether it be Katarina, Andrew, and so on. Certainly seek advice, because depending on your situation, depending on your requirements of when funds are required, will depend on where best to place those funds. So that's a very individual question, and I've given a very, I'll say, a narrow answer, and that is quite simply because it depends on your circumstances. So there's certainly different places that we can place those funds, for sure.
James, I like you thinking about diversification. I'm talking about that's a great start of any strategy. Something a little bit different from Julia, who has a fixed mortgage rate. If there is an increase, will it affect my fixed rates?
I'll go. Yep. So if rates increase whilst your rate, variable rates increase whilst your rate's fixed, no, it will not increase yours. However, something for you to be mindful of is the fact that when your rate comes off its fixed rate, so let's say you're fixed at, pick a number, 2%, and the variable rate, by the time you come off your fixed rate, is sitting at 3%, that's a significant jump. So it's just something to be aware of. So when you're on a fixed rate, be mindful of what the variable rate is and how long you are fixed for.
Yep, something I'll add to that. If you are going to speak, sorry, Roy, if you are going to speak to a professional about getting that sorted, give yourself months before it comes off.
Yep.
Because the banking turnaround times now, the way they're assessing lending is months. So you want to make sure you bridge that gap. So please speak to someone. I would suggest 6 months out, Tony. Do you think that's too soon?
No.
Yeah, please come and see us, guys. Sorry, Roy, I jumped in then.
I was just going to say to Julia that the fixed rate has a timeline, and that's what Tony was talking about. Look at the document to see when you come off fixed rate. You will stay fixed until that date, no matter what happens with interest rates. But get it sorted before you come off. Don't wait till the last week or the last month.
Yeah, 6 months, please, Julie. Go and talk to the team. Okay. Let me check some other general questions here, guys. Filippo, I believe we've discussed the rates that will affect you. I think
Paul, I might. There's one there I just might cover off on from
great.
Gary. Do we see that we'll have any price reductions on the retail shelves from the lowering of the fuel tax? I think the fuel tax is really aimed at voters, their mums and dads, and what we're seeing at the pump. And there's an election, so this fuel tax reduction is a 6-month period, and I think that's a little bit of election and trying to keep the inflation rate down. But it might have some effect, Gary, because everything that's delivered by trucks or however to the shelves and the shopping centres, that they'll also get that discount. So there might be some effect. Will it have much? In my honest opinion, I doubt it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the individual hip pocket. Businesses are looking to open now. So really simple example, if anyone online on today has tried to book a holiday inside Australia recently, or book conventions or restaurants, they're booked out, the prices have gone up, the waiting lists are through the roof. So people are open for business and they're trying to make the most of it, as they should, which is great. Sanctions are global. Yep, thanks, Julie. Our pleasure, Julie. Thanks for answering the question. Okay, ladies and gents, unless there's any more questions or comments, Alf, how would you like to finish off today?
Paul, I think one of the things that you know, in terms of anybody out there running a business and doing their planning before the 30th of June, one thing we need to keep in mind is that the accelerated depreciation, the investment allowance type of deductions are closing up at the 30th of June 22. So we will be going back to our old depreciation rules. So you've really got this last 3 months now to take full advantage of that. So I would say certainly reach out to your accountant to talk about these measures and what you can do before the 30th of June lapses. The other thing too, is if you should be looking at what's going to happen over the next, at least the next 12 months and factoring in this projected wage growth. We're talking about 3.5, 3.25 that's expected to come through. When you add your extra 0.5% on the super guarantee, again, that's going to be adding to the costs of running your business. So again, good time to start reviewing your budgets and what your income and costs are going to be for the next 12 months. So you've got a bit more of an idea of what you're going to try to do for the next 12 months. So this is what I would be saying to anybody out there running a business to focus on in the next period and certainly before the 30th of June.
Yeah, great points, mate. Yeah, certainly now's not the time to be a once a year discussion. Certainly a lot more forward thinking. Tony, any wrap up from you?
I do. Actually, so I'm going to start with, I was going to talk about the cost of living. I'm actually going to go back a year. I'm going to go back to last year's budget, which was passed earlier this year, which will have huge ramifications for people from the 1st of July. And that is something that we haven't touched on today, and it's something that's very important. So we have the ability, there's an increased contribution limit to superannuation. So previously, if you were aged 67 and above to 74 years of age, you could only contribute $110,000 into super if you met the work test. Well, the work test is being scrapped as of the end of June this year. So 1st of July, no work test, which means that anybody, and there are certain limits, but you can contribute $110,000 or up to $330,000 into superannuation. So that's huge. And the reason why I say that's huge is because that will impact a lot of people. So those people that weren't able to contribute to super because of they had retired and stopped working, well, now they can. So that's something to take into consideration. You can boost your spouse's super and reduce your tax as well in relation to contribution. So that's because there's no work test required. And the downsize contribution, where it was if you were aged 65 and above, you could put in $300,000 per person or up to $600,000 per couple. And we've done that for a number of clients in the last 12 months. Well, that age has dropped from 65 plus down to 60. And that doesn't count as part of your contribution caps. So there's a lot of things that have changed from last year's budget, which came into effect only a few months ago, which starts from the 1st of July. So when you do go in for your review, certainly there are discussions that we'll be having with our clients, and it will impact a lot of people. Whilst this budget will be, I'll say, the sugar hit for the short term, the longer term stuff was what was in last year's budget that has come to fruition.
Yeah, and worth talking and actioning now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Roy?
Yes, to answer one question, that technology investment boost, it starts as of last night when the budget was announced, so 29th of March, and it goes through until the 30th of June 2023. So we get a bit more than 12 months in relation to that technology boost. One item that hasn't had a lot of press to date is that the government have said that the Australian Defence Force personnel will increase by 30%, and they've cited uncertainty in the region. So that's an interesting issue given world conflicts at the moment and a little bit of minor conflict between Australia and China. And finally, there's a wrap up. I think there's a message here. I love budget time because it creates new opportunities for everybody and new directions and thinking about new different things. So I think the message here is if you're going to have some tax planning, talk to your accountant, book it in with your accountant. If you're going to do a review on where your investments are in your wealth management, book it in because I think between now and June 30, there will be opportunities. There's not, one size fits all. We can't say this is suitable for everybody. It's a case of looking at your personal circumstances. So book in a tax planning session or a wealth management session with your advisors.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Roy. Ladies and gents, thank you all very much for joining us today on quite a good topic, something that affects us all. As all of our panel has made it very clear, something that everyone should be doing is talking to our professionals. Our group is here to help, whether it be accounting, tax, advice or wealth. It's all very much about being proactive and in advance and planning for all these things, including the many opportunities available to you from last budget and this one. With that in mind, a gift to everybody online today, please give us a call. We'll give you our time and our skills and abilities to work with you to find out exactly where you are, exactly where you'd like to be and how we can map that out. So please reach out, phone, call, email, get in touch with us as we hear on this slide today. And we are absolutely here to help. It is our explicit pleasure. We've been doing it for a very long time and it's what keeps us going. So again, thank you for joining us. I hope you got something out. Thank you for those who sent the questions in earlier. It really does help us personalise our research, and thank you for those who joined us online today. It was fantastic. Alf, Tony, Roy, thank you, gents. Always a pleasure. Behind the scenes, Charles, Emily, Michelle, Stella, thank you, ladies. Fantastic. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Please stay safe. See you soon. Bye.